I've been following this story, and so I'm going to continue to follow the story, even though this one is going to be relatively quick because there's not a huge amount to add here. I was fascinated by what took place in Italy. In Italy, the election that took place, the Five-Star Movement and the League took power in Italy. These were anti-establishment parties. And right-wing, even though the policy agenda that they set forth is this kind of odd combination between right-wing and left-wing. So they were pushing for a citizen wage, or might as well say a universal basic income, a decrease in the retirement age, and of course, tax cuts. Now, and again, anti-immigrant for the country itself. So it's a right-wing party. This party was going to run afoul of the European Union because the European Union has certain restrictions on the amount of budget. There's budget stuff that goes into play for the standpoint of the European Union, meaning the amount of your debts. The European Union has a certain management over top of those things, and there's a certain agreements that each of the countries made once they got themselves in the Eurozone. The argument here came in the amount of money that they wanted to spend. They wanted to spend, I think it was like 2.4%, meaning deficit, and they ended up going down to 2.04% in somewhat of an agreement. Now, this agreement, they still have said that they're not giving up their policy objectives, meaning they're still going to try to put forth like the citizen wage and those type of things. The opposition party, of course, said that the budget was written by Brussels. It's not fully true, but by the same token, it kind of is in an odd way. I mean, after all, they wanted to have their budget in their particular way, and Brussels, standing over top of them, essentially told them no. And not just no, there were going to be fines associated with them if they didn't change that budget. So they turned around and they changed it to some degree. Now, mind you, the Yellow Vest movement in France, Macron proposed a budget where he's going to blow the budget up because he's not paying for the things that he's giving away back to the workers, meaning what he's agreed upon from the standpoint of what the state is going to do in order to assist those people who are protesting is going to come out of the budget of the state itself. They're not going to, that sounds a little weird, they're not going to raise taxes in this way, and they're not going to get rid of the tax cuts that Macron passed or pushed through. They're instead just going to put it on the budgets, on the dime, on the deficit. The European Union gives this a blind eye, while simultaneously not necessarily giving a blind eye to Italy. Just think that's interesting in a way that they let one country skate when people start setting stuff on fire. Italy defies Brussels and rubber stamps budget, avoiding crippling fines. Matteo Salvini, Luigi Di Maio redrafted Rome's budget and cut the deficit next year to 2.04% of gross domestic product after Brussels rejected its original target of 2.4%, saying it broke EU fiscal rules. This year's deficit is seen as 1.9%. The budget presented to the Italian parliament in October overcame its final hurdle tonight when the government comfortably won a vote of confidence on the bill by 327 to 228. The confidence motion marked the end of an acrimonious debate in which the opposition ministers complained that the last-minute deal marked a block, meant that they had no time to properly assess or debate the amended package of measures. Now, they had to pass this before the end of the year, otherwise there was going to be penalties associated with it. Let's see. Italy's public debt, proportional to the highest in the Eurozone after Greece, is targeted to fall marginally to 130.7% of GDP next year from 131.7% in 2018. A final vote to certify the passage of the budget will be held in the chamber later on Saturday or on Sunday, but this is considered no more than a formality. Essentially, this budget is going to pass. And again, right-wing government, but their Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte hailed the budget the first step for a broad and ambitious plan to reform which will turn Italy inside out like a sock and finally boost a chronically sluggish economic growth. Their argument is, look, you can grow your way out of this. You don't necessarily have to just continue to make cuts. And again, some of these policies, like the citizens' income, was popular. I mean, they won in spades because the public wanted what they were putting out. And it wasn't this austerity, it was growth. 7 months after coming to power, the government remains popular, with the two ruling parties backed by around 60% of Italians, according to opinion polls. What do you know? Pushing forth policies that represent the interests of the public itself are popular. Now, unfortunately, there's an anti-immigrant tint to this, which is somewhat uncomfortable and unsettling. But I just want to point to the domestic policies that these guys are pushing were popular. And that's part and parcel to why they got elected. Not to mention the class of politician, the political class, have been magnificently discredited, allowing these guys to sweep into power. So I'm going to end this. This one wasn't meant to be long. It's just kind of an update of what's been taking place. I find these battles between the European Union and the member states to be fascinating. The Italian government positioned itself as anti-European Union to some degree. And so any spec that they have, it would essentially gain a certain degree of political capital by having the spec in the first place, particularly with the Italian population being for this particular party. Getting across that anti-European Union to some degree was popular. I hope that makes sense. Seeing the pivot points and the way they use domestic politics, I don't know, I find this fascinating. So that's why I cover it. I'll end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.